Okay, and welcome back everyone. Back to the Let's Play of the Blackstone Chronicles. Where we last left off, we were in this nasty looking room.
You're not listening to me, friend. Sitting in that chair opens up the gates of hell.
Obviously he's named Jack because that's
the frequency machine. They got a guy stands there who turns the dials so they don't match the numbers behind your head. If they do match, some kind of resonance thing happens. The machine blows a gasket, and they gotta go to Boston to fix it.
That's in reference to Jack Nicholson's portrayal in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's
Oh,
Nest.
you should see this baby when it's all lit up. Lights are flashing and sirens are going. Then they send about 1,000,000,000 volts right through your head. After that, you don't remember much for a few days. Then you remember too much.
It's a nice little homage. It's not a bad impression.
That's the master switch. When they throw that sucker, you got exactly 90 seconds till the end of the world. Are you nuts? Get out of here! The way I figure it, they brought in an expert special just to put the light in the exact spot to annoy you the most. That's where the juice comes from. Whoa, you should see this baby when it's all...
Alright, I think that's all we need from him for now. He actually gave us a pretty important clue. I have to remember what he said. Electroconvulsive therapy has its roots in the shock treatments that were developed in the 1930s, invented by Ugo Cerletti and Lucio Bini, who adapted their first device from a pair of tongs used to stun hogs in a slaughterhouse. The treatment induces a convulsion by passing an electric current through the brain. By 1950, over 175,000 people in the United States were being administered ECT on a regular basis. The mechanism by which ECT works is not known. The treatment is generally administered twice or 3 times a week until the patient improves or until it becomes clear that further treatment will be ineffective. Like other treatments for depression, ECT is not a permanent cure. The rate of relapse is fairly high. Studies suggest that as many as a third of the most severely depressed patients relapse within 4 months and half within a year. So it works, it just doesn't seem to last long for most people. And like I said before, it causes so much damage that it is definitely a last resort. Most of the machines in this room were designed by Dr. Metcalf and built to his specifications. Naturally, the modern equipment used to deliver ECT is considerably more compact and reliable. The generator in back provided the electricity, but the current it put out varied so much that an additional operator was needed to monitor its frequency to ensure that it did not match that of the ECT machine itself, as this would set up resonance such that it would shut down parts of the machine. The chair is made of wood. It is not insulated in any way, as the shock only travels a very short distance. Pay attention to that. Very short distance through the patient's head, and there is no danger of electrocution to the operator. Indeed, attendants manually restrained the patient's arms because strapping them down resulted in too many injuries during the convulsive portion of the therapy. The EEG machine on the right has changed very little from Dr. Metcalf's day to today. It still measures low delta, theta, and alpha up to the fast beta brainwaves. Yeah, as far as I know, there are 4 different types of brainwaves. That's accurate. The patient was not allowed breakfast on the day they were to receive treatment. Of course not. Upon arriving in the treatment room, a conductive paste was smeared on the temples, and he was seated in the chair. The patient's chest was strapped down, but not his arms. These were restrained by attendants because the inflexibility of mechanical restraints invariably led to injuries. A mouth guard was placed in the patient's mouth to ensure he did not bite through his tongue. Upon power-up, the headset containing the electrodes would lower onto the patient's head, and the countdown to the actual shock would begin. Duration and intensity of the shock were estimated on a case-by-case basis by the operator of the equipment. Side effects. The most pronounced side effect of ECT is memory loss, both short-term and long-term. Some patients report memory gaps covering the time immediately before treatment, while others lose memories from earlier periods of their lives. A patient typically recovers consciousness quickly after the treatment, but he is confused or dazed and may experience headaches for the remainder of that day. Almost all patients can continue to perform routine functions after receiving ECT, although more complex skills, like playing the piano, are sometimes impaired. There are historical accounts of ECT being used to subdue and punish patients, with particularly troublesome individuals receiving several shocks in a single day. However, there are no records of such behavior occurring at Blackstone. I'm gonna call BS on that one. I'm hearing otherwise from the patients. Really hard to believe much of any of this, although like I said, most of the scientific information so far is accurate, if not biased.
The basic stethoscope has changed surprisingly little through the years. It is believed that this one belonged to the superintendent himself. Mouth guards were provided for the comfort of the patients.
My ass!
Oh, come on, Jack. That was true.
There's nothing like a shiny piece of cold metal on your chest, first thing in the morning. Hello! They'd go through 2 or 3 of those each week. Hell, they got the damn settings wrong once, and I bit clear through a brand new one myself. Leave it alone. You don't know where it's been. I do.
I wonder if this really belonged to my father.
All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy.
Those things go across your chest, not your arms, see? Because when the volts hit, you spasm so bad, your arms would break. So an orderly stands on each side. And those guys were mean bastards, too. They punch you in the gut when the doctors weren't looking. That's the EEG machine. The doctors think it's a big deal, but the orderlies say it don't mean squat.
Even today, to a certain extent, certainly back in those days, the interview process for attendance was not the
Never let
best.
them get those babies on your head. Once they're on, you can keep fighting, but the game's already over.
Even to this day, the treatment of patients in inpatient settings
Look what the cat dragged in.
is not exactly humane at all times, sadly.
What did you do?
That's the outside. Forget the outside. The game's in here, and if you lose it all.
It seems too serious for that.
If you don't treat it like a game, you'll go crazy. It's all you against the system. Don't give up. Never say die. Don't you dare let the bastards win. The truth is, they're not that smart. So it's not too hard to outthink them. Except Metcalf. He's the smart one.
Isn't the game rigged?
They think they're holding all the cards. And they are. But that doesn't mean you can't flip over the table.
It sounds like you're proud of yourself.
You're damn right I'm proud. I took every punch those turds could throw and came right back for more. They never licked Jack Kramer, and they knew it.
Did they all fight back?
Nah, most of them didn't have it in them. I remember one morning they found a woman in the ward, hanging with her head wedged between the transom and the doorframe. They never figured out how she got there. I did it. It was an act of mercy. I wish someone had the guts to do the same for me. Her last words before I pulled away the chair, you know what they were? God bless you.
Did you ever get out?
You sit in that chair. with the electrodes clamped to your skin. And between the shocks, there's this strange odor. And then you realize that the last smell that's in your nostrils as you die is the stink of your own flesh burning. No, I didn't win. Nobody won.
Let's not spend too long in this room.
They don't look like much, but they're great to hang on to when the orderlies are trying to get you in the chair. That's to catch the puke. Some guys really spew when the volts hit them.
That's obviously why they don't want the patients eating on the day that they have to receive treatment. Less mess that way. Let's move somewhere more positive, shall we? Let's head back into his office. I think there's something I need in here. Now that we have this, bingo. Let's save it real quick. We might have some tricks on that safe. Just guessing ain't gonna do it. There's gotta be a number around here somewhere. He seems like he's been pretty sloppy. He just kind of leaves information like passwords and whatnot around.
That was taken on your 3rd birthday. It's you and your sister Mallory. The day you were born was the most important day of my life.
4/24/55. My character was 3, so maybe it's 4/24/52. Gotta be very careful. 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then 1, 2, 52. Aha, there we go.
I found a hole in the wall, Dad. Maybe I can make it bigger.
You're a good boy, Josh. I'm proud of you.
It is a Fabergé egg. It looks delicate, but if you don't know the trick to opening it, it would take quite a bit of pressure to get it to crack. It's It's just an ordinary box. I don't know why that woman insists on calling it a casket.
I don't like that it's called a casket.
It is a Fabergé egg. It looks delicate. It's just an ordinary...
It's locked.
And of course it's locked. That's all we need in here at the moment. Let's go back to the basement. Not back to the ECT room, mind you. There's another room down here that we didn't get a chance to look at. Not looking forward to this one, either.
Some stains stay with us.
It's locked.
Can't go in the morgue. Probably don't want to anyway. Fever therapy. Yeah, another bright and cheery room.
I'd offer you a chair, son, but I don't think you'd want it. The name's Nick. It's called a Utica cage. They lock you in there overnight and set it so you can't unbend your legs. If you treated a dog like that, they'd throw you in jail. You stay away from that. That cage is real trouble.
Never heard of that kind of cage.
They'd strap you in that thing, lower the box over your head, and just leave you there. They'd cut a hole in the seat so you could crap. The women were lucky, they pee straight down, but the men pissed all over themselves because they couldn't get their hands free. Now don't do that. That's not even a good joke. Howdy.
Were you an inmate?
Yeah, you mean what am I in for? I'm just old is all. I forget things. My wife died, my kids didn't know what to do with me, so I ended up here.
Now that's really sad.
Did they know what it's like in here?
Are you nuts? You think I'd tell them that? They'd done the best they could by me. They deserve to get on with their lives. Everybody's got to die somewhere. I told them old Nick Brennan was doing fine.
How did you get by?
The first thing is, don't let them see you cry. They'll think you're depressed and start pouring pills down your throat faster than you can say Jack Robinson.
Any other tips?
Don't turn your back on that Metcalf guy. He talks civilized, but he's got a mean streak a mile wide.
Did they know what they were doing?
Are you kidding? They were shooting in the dark and we were the far wall. They didn't have a clue why people go haywire. Anybody got cured around here, it was because they were desperate to get away from the quacks.
Hearing more and more bad things about this place. If that weren't fairly obvious. The earliest theories of mental illness revolved around the theory of the humors. Sickness, it was thought, was caused by an overabundance of one of the 4 essential fluids in the body: blood, phlegm, choler, yellow bile, and melancholy, black bile. The most common method of bringing the fluids back into balance was bloodletting. Additionally, the patients were given purgatives to empty their bowels or emetics to make them vomit. Great advances were made with the advent of METRAZOL and insulin shock treatments, and these in turn were eventually supplemented by various fever therapies. When not being used to administer these treatments, this room also served as solitary, an area to confine the unruly patients until they calmed down. Prior to World War I, an Austrian doctor named Julius Wagner von Jorag became convinced that high body temperatures caused by fever would kill the infection that caused mental illness. He experimented on patients, injecting them with tuberculosis, typhoid fever, recurrent fever, and erysipelas, but did not meet with success. After the war, he encountered a soldier with a different kind of fever, malaria. He drew blood from him and injected it into some of his patients. He reported that half of them improved. Wagner Jorag's work was enthusiastically received, and he was awarded the 1927 Nobel Prize for Medicine. Malaria therapy quickly became standard practice in treating schizophrenics and was not discredited as an effective treatment until many years later. Oh my. Yeah, they're already sick enough, so let's just inject malaria into them to make it worse. Awesome. INSULINCOMA treatment was developed by Manfred Sakel, a Viennese doctor who had been using insulin as a tranquilizer for morphine addicts in withdrawal. When he accidentally gave an overdose to one of his patients, she went into a coma. When she recovered, Sakel thought he detected an improvement in her mental state. Sakel developed a course of treatment based on the hypothesis that inducing insulin shock in a patient somehow helped drive out mental illness. The treatment called for patients to be injected with enough insulin to send them into a coma. After an appropriate amount of time, during which the inpatient suffered a series of violent convulsions, the doctor injected the patient with a dose of glucose to counteract the insulin. Mortality for insulin treatment was about 6 per 1,000, and brain damage occurred, when glucose wasn't injected fast enough, in about 8.5 per 1,000. I know I shouldn't judge these treatments because it was a different time, and they just didn't know as much, but looking back on this, it's just like, why would you ever do this to people? In 1935, Ladislaus von Meduna, a Hungarian physician, noted that epileptic patients rarely became schizophrenic. Believing that epileptic seizures somehow prevented psychosis, he set out to induce convulsions in schizophrenic patients through artificial means. He initially used camphor, but eventually settled on the synthetic preparation METRAZOL. Within a few years, METRAZOL therapy was being used extensively in the United States, and by 1940, virtually every mental institution included it in their treatment plans. Although the original belief that epileptics cannot become schizophrenic turned out to be false, the treatment was still very popular among hospital clinicians. The major drawback to the therapy were the injuries that accompanied the violent convulsions, mostly fractures of the femur, arm, scapula, spine, and jaw. Also, the cure rate proved to be roughly identical to the rate of spontaneous recovery, i.e. people who got better without treatment. In other words, it did nothing. If that cure rate is identical to spontaneous recovery, then it's not valid. I know it's easy for me to shake my head at this right now, but I just have to remember this is all they knew.
Glisters were used by the medical staff to evacuate the bowels of the patients.
That's a polite way of saying they stuck it up your behind and squeezed.
Lancets and scarificators were used to bleed the patients. It was believed that doing so would bring their bodily humors back into balance.
Bull hockey! They did it to keep us weak so we couldn't fight back.
Now, that whole bit about the humors, that was like ancient Greek thinking. They should not have been still operating from that perspective now.
All the contraptions ever invented to stick inside a body, that was the most painful. If them doctors was ever to use one of them things on themselves, they would have invented something new the next day.
I mean, bloodletting by leeches went away in the medieval ages.
Trust me, son. There ain't a damn thing good you can do with that. Oh, they knew more ways to cut a body open than a dog has fleas.
Not much excuse for them to still be using that.
You leave those be. Enough people have been hurt with them already.
Anything I need over here? find in here?
That's where they keep all the medicines. They pretended it was scientific, but me, I think it was just mix and match. I remember Dr. Metcalf used to keep some kind of key in one of them drawers. I knew it was important, so I made up a way so I wouldn't forget. But all I remember now is the name Mandy Lee. It must have meant something to me at the time, but now I forget what it was. That's it. Now I remember. How could I forget my own daughter's address? That's where they'd catch your blood when they open your vein. You got no idea what it's like to sit there and watch your blood drain out, knowing if the orderly doesn't come back in time, you'll bleed to death. They all look kind. You already found the key, son.
I don't know if it'll let you just sit there and randomly open the drawers. I kind of doubt it. You have to have that information, and you have to know which drawer is which. So that's the whole point of looking up Mandy Lee. I forgot about that.
It's too small to fit on the ring. No wonder he had to hide it.
Yep, that works. Ah, there's our handkerchief.
So you found it at last. Better hurry and get it back to Vi before she decides she's Joan of Arc.
It looks the same as all the
What are
others.
these vials? I don't like the look of this.
Each of these vials contains a highly concentrated dose of a lethal biotoxin. One is snake venom, one is bubonic plague, the third is typhus, and the last is malaria.
Uh-oh, here we go again.
Unfortunately, without the labels, it is impossible to determine which is which. I wonder which you are injecting yourself with at this very moment. I'm sure you'll know soon. The concentration is such that the symptoms appear almost instantly. And if you don't administer the correct antidote within a few hours, you will certainly die.
Oh, great. Well, now that I've done that, might as well save. This is another timed puzzle, although it's much longer. You have much more time than the rest of them. And I have no choice but to wait and see what pops up. Anyway, I think I'll cut it short for now. I don't have a lot of time today, so Chronos 006 signing off.